I will at least give the Jets organization, in particular owner Woody Johnson, this is they realize the error of their ways and they realize just how bad things really were. It wasn't that hard to see before 2014, but it couldn't be denied after the 2014 season. That big, massive, drastic changes were needed. Rex Ryan was finally sent packing. John Idzik, the incompetent money guy who was clearly over his head as a general manager, was also sent packing. And a house cleaning is underway with the New York Jets. And they have filled those vacancies, both at head coach and general manager. And I'm here to give you my thoughts on those hires. And first, I want to start off with the man that the Jets pegged to be their next head football coach, and that is Arizona Cardinals defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. Here's a guy that comes with a legit NFL pedigree in his background. He was a defensive back in the National Football League for 8 seasons. Here's a guy that's worked throughout the coaching ranks, worked up through the coaching ranks over the past 15-plus years. He's had previous stints on the coaching staffs of Bill Parcells, Andy Reid, and most recently Bruce Arians. So he's been around some quality head coaches that understand how to win games in the National Football League. And a really good thing about this hire for the New York Jets is the fact that your weakness defensively was in the secondary. Todd Bowles has a strength in the secondary. He knows the secondary, so he should be able to come in and instantly turn around the performance of that secondary for the New York Jets. What we're also looking at here is a guy that has some legit pedigree in terms of his proficiency as a defensive coordinator in the National Football League. You look at the Cardinals, they've had a top 10 defense in points allowed the past 2 seasons. It was even more impressive in 2014 as the Cardinals went 11-5 and made the playoffs because they went a good portion of the season without Carson Palmer as a starting quarterback and even without their backup Drew Stanton. Here's an Arizona Cardinals defense that without John Abraham, without Darnell Dockett, without Darrell Washington, arguably 3 of their top 5 or 6 defensive starters, managed to finish 5th in the league in points allowed, and 13 out of 16 times this season allowed 20 points or less. While Bowles' defenses gave up some yardage, in particular through the air, you cannot deny that at the end of the day, they didn't allow a lot of points. And what they were able to do without some of those big names, the Abrahams, the Docketts, the Washingtons, was very impressive indeed. So when you look at a Todd Bowles, 51 years old, getting his first head coaching gig, a slightly different personality from Rex Ryan in terms of he's not quite the outgoing individual. He's not quite the media magnet that a Rex Ryan was. But that's a good thing. If one type of leadership didn't work, then you have to find a different type of leadership. I disagree with this notion that that doesn't matter that much. No, in a lot of cases that matters tremendously. If one of the reasons that you need to move on is because of the personality and leadership style of the one that came before, why would you bring in another individual that mirrors that person in so many different ways? That's the problem you're trying to move on from. You don't want to perpetuate that cycle and repeat that same mistake over again, do you? I actually applaud the New York Jets here. I understand that they may have wanted Dan Quinn of the Seattle Seahawks, but frankly, when it comes to Dan Quinn, you look at the last defensive coordinator for the Seahawks that went on to get a head coaching gig. That was Gus Bradley with the Jaguars. Yeah, it was the Jaguars, but he really hasn't lit the world on fire. And there's no guarantee that a Dan Quinn would have done any differently because we should all know by now that Pete Carroll is the one that really orchestrates and really runs that defense. Whereas with Todd Bowles in Arizona these past 2 years, we know that with Arians being an offensive-minded head coach, that Todd Bowles was in charge. He was that man on the defensive side of the ball. He was the one that coordinated the defense. He was the one that came up with the game plan for the defense. He was the play caller for the defense. So even more so than a Dan Quinn, I think Todd Bowles perfectly fits the bill. However, with that said, I'm not so sure that this was the best hiring because the Jets' problem for years has been on the offensive side of the ball. So in part, again, when I talk about learning from the mistakes of the past and not being doomed to repeat them, why would you bring in another defensive-minded head coach when you just got done with one the past 6 years where the results were mediocre to bad and the defense wasn't all that great? This seems in many ways perhaps history repeating itself. Although I do like the decision, believe it or not, by Todd Bowles to bring in Chan Gailey as an offensive coordinator. Sometimes Jets fans and NFL media and football fans in general have a problem differentiating between what a guy can do as a head coach and what a guy can do as a coordinator. Perfect example, Norv Turner. Not the best head coach in the world, but he is a guy that you want running your offense as an offensive coordinator. And I'm not comparing Chan Gailey to what you would get in a Norv Turner. However, I do think Chan Gailey is a quality offensive coordinator. It is the right type of offensive mind for a Todd Bowles to surround himself with. And that was critical and that was important. And I thought that was a good decision. So if Todd Bowles coming in means bringing in Chan Gailey as the offensive coordinator, that's not the worst thing in the possible world. I'm not saying that this is the greatest hire in the world, but the Jets, frankly, could have done worse. And I respect Todd Bowles, and I thought he was ready for an NFL head coaching gig. And the Jets kind of make sense for him. The thing that I have trouble understanding, though, is the hiring of McCaggnan, as the team's general manager. This is one in particular that has Charlie Casserly's fingerprints all over it. And I love the quote, what was it, Bill Belichick years ago that said, what the hell has Charlie Casserly ever gotten right? He's kind of right. I mean, maybe it's because Charlie Casserly's been in the NFL media for so many years and we see him on television that we associate him with being this great football mind. Let me assure you of this. Just because a person has been involved with football for years, just because a guy has been a previous NFL general manager for years, that doesn't make him very qualified, and that doesn't mean that he knows what the hell he's doing. We see this all the time in the business world. Somebody could be in their same job for 20, 25 years. They could totally suck at it, not know what the fuck they're doing. But they've convinced enough people around them that they do. This is not a new phenomenon, and this is not something that is unknown to the NFL. We see teams all the time consistently get draft picks wrong and get head coaching hirings wrong and all of this stuff. And, you know, you look at Casserly and his track record. Yes, he was once involved with the Redskins organization, but a lot of that quality infrastructure was put in place by general manager Bobby Beathard. You look at Casserly's work with the Houston Texans. Frankly, what the hell did he really do? The Texans didn't make the playoffs, finally, until the 2011 season, several years after Charlie Casserly was shown the door. Or he left, whatever you want to say it. This is the same Charlie Casserly that drafted Mario Williams #1 overall in 2006. And some of you will look back and say, hey, you know, well, that worked out well compared to Bush and Vince Young. Yeah, where the hell is Mario Williams now? And what did he really do, and how much impact did he really have on that organization? And you look at the years before that, what made that Mario Williams pick so bad was the taking of the LeBoys, or the Babbins, and the Travis Johnsons of the world. He kept drafting defensive players, and it's just this whole mindset that was flawed. Well, you got to stop Peyton Manning. Well, you missed on those picks, and you still couldn't stop Peyton Manning. You got to be able, at some point in time, to be able to score some damn points yourself. Ignoring the quarterback position, you know, and all of these different things. He gets credit maybe for being involved in drafting an Andre Johnson, but not much else other than that, frankly. So now we've put him in charge of finding a general manager, and of course he's going to go to one of his boys, McCaggnan. And what has he done? He's been the director of scouting for the Houston Texans the past 4 years. Part of the thing to me is if you're trying to turn around an operation and you're trying to get better and you want to build a winner, you want to get somebody from a winner, somebody who's actually been a part of success. Why would I be bringing in somebody from the Houston Texans organization, a Texans organization that has made the playoffs twice in their 13-year history and finished only 9-7 in 2014? This is a team, mind you, that just the year before finished 2-14 and had the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I don't get it. And when you look at McCaggnan, and his time as the director of scouting, and you could say at the end of the day that's Rick Smith's call. That may be true, but a lot of that call is based off of the recommendations of the scouting department, which is helped put in place by a guy like McCaggnan as the director of scouting, and the recommendations of him. So if the Texans organization's drafting has not been that good in recent years, which it has not, then what does that say about the guys that are influencing the decisions that are made when it comes to these guys? People are going to point to McCaggnan and be like, oh my God, he drafted J.J. Watt. That's phenomenal. That gives him a 10-year pass. Okay, that was one guy. What else has he really drafted? When you look at 2011, the only other contributor out of that draft class of any note is Brooks Reed, their second-round pick, and he's a average NFL player. 2012, Whitney Merciless out of Illinois, solid 3-4 outside linebacker, but nothing special. Jared Crick is their other notable player from that draft, and he's a 4th rounder, and he's more solid than he is spectacular. You look at 2013, you've got DeAndre Hopkins in the 1st round, sure. Then you got a guy like DJ Swearinger in the 2nd round, and he hasn't quite lived up to the billing of justifying a 2nd round pick. And then you look at this 2014 draft. This is the knucklehead that thought Jadeveon Clowney should go #1 overall, along with Rick Smith and Bill O'Brien. And there needs to be accountability for that. We're rewarding mediocrity here. We're rewarding failure. Not only did they take Jadeveon Clowney, when to me he clearly wasn't the best defensive player on the board. That was either Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald. And of course, I was proven right on this. They failed to address the quarterback position until the 4th round. And then when they did, they went to a 25-year-old Tom Savage. They decided they would rather have Xavier Su'a-Filo at the 1st pick of the 2nd round instead of trying to move up a little bit to get Bridgewater because, God forbid, we need to establish a physical identity. Screw what we have at the quarterback position. So a guy that comes from an organization that failed to ever effectively address the quarterback position, particularly through the draft, is now coming to the Jets, an organization that has had that exact same problem. A guy that has drafted much better on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball is now coming into a New York Jets situation where they have the same problem. They've drafted much better and even not that great on the defensive side of the ball than they most certainly have on the offensive side of the ball. So in many ways, you could argue for the Jets, it's more of the same. Bowles is a similar type of personality to Rex Ryan, although not as overt and outspoken in the media, but a defense-first type of guy. Previous coordinator experience. Then you bring in a general manager that, yes, has scouting experience and is a football guy, but he comes from an organization that's never really pieced it together and never really figured it out and hasn't had any real sustained success of any kind in the 13 years of their existence. I would think if I'm looking for a general manager, I want somebody from, let's say, the Baltimore Ravens, or I want somebody from the Green Bay Packers, or the Seattle Seahawks, or the Indianapolis Colts, or hell, even the Cincinnati Bengals. Teams that have actually proven that they can draft well. The Houston Texans have not. This McCaggnan hiring is puzzling to me. I know NFL people are going to sit there and say, oh my God, he works so hard, and he's paid his dues, and what the fuck does that have to do with anything? There are people all the time in the different aspects of the working world that work incredibly hard, and they can't get the job done. They fucking suck. That's why they work so hard, because they don't know what the hell they're doing. It's great, and I applaud the man for having a great work ethic, but his track record's not that good. Work ethic alone does not necessarily translate into bottom-line results. And that's what a lot of NFL scouts and general managers and front office executives seem to not get here. And even the media that is buying into this being a great decision. What the fuck has Charlie Casserly ever done? What the fuck did he ever do right with the Houston Texans? The biggest problems of the Houston Texans are the biggest problems that the Jets have had for fucking years. So now you're bringing in a guy to do a lot more of the same old crap. The biggest concern of all the Jets fans, though, and for me from the outside looking in, is that Woody Johnson said that both Bowles and McCaggnan are going to be reporting directly to him. That's not a formula for success. That's not what a lot of championship, high-caliber, high-quality organizations do. There's a hierarchy and an infrastructure typically in place in commonality in those organizations for a reason, you dumb dick. The head coach should not be reporting to the owner. Frankly, the general manager himself, unless he is the team president, should not be reporting to the owner. You have a head coach who reports directly to a general manager who reports to a team president who then at that point in time reports to you as the owner and or maybe your board of directors, whatever the case might be. So when I see this, people are going to talk about, well, you got Charlie Casserly and you got Ron Wolf involved in the process. Okay, and what the fuck does that mean? In a lot of ways, this looks like the same old Jets type of crap that we've grown accustomed to. I like the hire of Bowles, frankly, a lot more than I like the hire of McCaggnan. You need to fix the offensive side of the ball. That's what sunk your previous regime. So now you're going to bring in a guy that has a clear deficiency on the offensive side of the ball, both in terms of as a head coach and as a general manager. That's the Jets for you.